Hello everyone. This is another video inspired by Hunterman. It's the difference between conditioning dogs for conformation and competition. Show and go, if you will. Uh, is there a difference? In my opinion, there is. You know, when you're conditioning for conformation, you want the judge to be able to see all aspects of the dog's body. It has to do also with their attitude, of course, their structure. You want to see all the muscle groups defined, uh, front, side, and from behind. The judge should go all the way around or make you walk. They have you walk out, come back, so you can see them from. When they're walking away from behind, you see their gait and their structure, and when they're coming at you on the way back, you see their gait and structure. From the side, if you can stack them, you see all the muscle groups from the side, the lines line across their rib, the side of their chest, the muscle that covers their brisket and all that. Same with the front. You can see the shoulders, legs, all that. From the side, you also see the stifles. From the rear, you see the stifles. Uh, you just want good definition, you know. In competition, you want the same thing, but the competition form of an animal is a direct result of how you condition the dog. Some are more racy type, some are more thicker, bulkier. A lot of attention is paid to the stifle because that's where their power comes from. Their balance can be measured, how they place their feet. You see the muscle in their jaw on top of their head should be split. There's a lot of different things. Sometimes you see sinews of the muscle on their chest, just like you would a boxer and a human boxer that competes, that's trained, ready for competition. One of the differences I would suggest, though, is in competition, you condition the dog and you peak him out for that day. And with conformation, if all you're doing that day is the conformation, I wouldn't suggest peaking a dog out. Getting them in good shape, exercising them, putting them through work, hard work, whatever. But in my mind, because the dog is not going to exhibit what you did in the keep, I wouldn't do that for this reason. They're mentally prepared just as much as they are, if not more, physically prepared. So if you mentally prepare the dog for a competition, that's great. That's what you should do. If you do it for conformation, that could mess with their head. And what I mean is, they could become overly aggressive, not talking about people, but to other dogs. It could cause a problem in the show ring. It could actually depress them if they don't get to release that energy in that way, just like a formal competition. They could become destructive. They could become unruly, because that's what conditioning is. That's the end result of the conditioning. You're peaking them out because they're preparing for whatever comes their way on that day of the show in the traditional sense. So I see that as a difference. Competition in the modern times is, could be hunting, could be wall climb, could be treadmill race, could be weight pull, mostly weight pull. In hunting, if you have catch dogs and hog hunting, catch dogs for hog hunting, the guys I've been around, they don't condition in the traditional sense like we would, treadmills and all that stuff. What they do is uh, like you would with roller pigeons or racing pigeons. You get them out there and you fly them. You get the dogs out there and you run them. You run them chasing hogs, or run them through the forest where I've been. It's big 1,000-acre, big trees, and they just run them. Now they may catch a hog, but if they're heavy, it might be a little difficult for them to catch a hog. So you're getting them just like you would maybe an Iditarod dog. You're putting them in the situation, or you're going through the motions of what they would do naturally when they're running Iditarod, or they're running, running hogs, right? And you do that over a period of time, that sharpens them up, gets them down in weight, builds their muscle, builds their air, builds their lungs. So when they go on a real hunt, they're prepared for, quote unquote, going the distance. So each how would you say, event requires a different type of conditioning. Each event requires different methods. So in the legal sports, if I was involved in them, that's how I would train the dog. Because in the traditional sense of training, that's how I condition my dogs for the box, emulating or simulating what would go on in the box. So you have peaks and valleys in conditioning. You're building, I like to build air, then build strength. And I put them through the motions, basically, of the pace that they would go through in a show. With the legal sports, that's what I would do. I would condition them for the pace and the event itself. So, for example, treadmill race, whatever the time limit is or the distance they run, that's how I would condition my dog. I would do sets like that. And I would follow the same pattern or same standards of feeding the dog 24 hours out, emptying them out, and then they would do the competition. So for treadmill race, you're going to run more than one race. That's what I would do. I would do sets emulating that treadmill race. Put them up there. And by doing that, what I'm trying to do is increase the pace of the dog during the race. Because the faster they run, that's how you win. And the same with, not the same, but with weight pull. I would simulate how they would do the weight pull. I want them to be strong. I want to peak them out for that strength, and I want to do sets because they're going to be pulling all day, sometimes all night, several pulls in that competition. But you need them strong. They need to be empty before you start the competition. They need to be, and because it's over the course of an afternoon or a whole day or half a day, whatever it is, they're gonna need to be replenished. I would advise using electrolytes, not food. I've seen this happen. They'll empty out during the day. You don't want them emptying out during the day. Maybe taking a piss is okay. You don't want too many fluids in their belly. You don't want food in their belly. So I would simulate doing that. Now, some might think, well, they're going to be weak. They're going to go hours and hours of not having anything to eat. It's not going to make them weak, for one, because dogs can go a whole day without eating. That's how we feed anyways. And a lot of them are active during the day anyways. Even the ones that ate, you can prep them for that. make sure they have enough food in their system to carry them over through the competition, through the day, without having to feed them again. Now maybe you could give them maybe a little bit of tuna or something like that, but you don't want them full, because it could cause adverse reaction. You could make them throw up because of the stress you're putting on their body. Same thing with the treadmill race, same thing with the wall climb. If you're going to do wall climbs, get you a setup. Have your own wall climb. Practice the wall climb. And if you're just introducing your dog, that's the best way to do it. Start when they're young. Start simulating the wall climb competition. I mean, just the way it would go on a show. Now you could, do several wall climbs in a row or something like that to get them to understand the wall climb and to practice it and know what they're doing. After that, I would go through, when I'm prepping them for a competition, I would go through that same simulation of how the show goes. Come up, do a certain distance, bam, do it. Wait a little bit, do it again, do it again. I would emulate the whole day like that. Take a day or two, whatever it is, throughout the competition, and simulate that wall climb. Repeat. Do the wall climb, rest. Do the wall climb, rest. Do the wall climb, rest. Same thing with the treadmill race. Do the race, rest. Do the race, rest. You can walk them out, all that, in case they need to piss. Weight pull, same thing. I would build a track. Or not build a track even, but I would have a cart. Simulate it. Put some weights on it. First teach them how to do it, Once they got the hang of it, then start putting some weights on it. Or have the kids sit on the cart. One kid first, two if you got 2 or 3 kids, Or just get some weights. And just like formal competition, like we used to do, you don't want to do them 100%. You don't want them to repeatedly hit that mark of the wall climb or carry that 2,000 pounds over and over again, because that could have an adverse effect too, unless you're increasing the weight or you're increasing the height, right? And it's not that they can't make that height, and it's not that you don't want them to jump that high or you don't want them to pull that much weight. But what I'm saying is you want to preserve the energy for them to exert 100% that day of the show, just like in the traditional sense. You want to save that for the show, and that comes through the workouts, that comes through the practice, that comes through the peaking, the conditioning. So the concepts are the same. It's just how much stress do you want to put on them? How much peaking do you want to do as far as the event itself, the race, the wall climb, the lure course, the weight pool? You have to know when to back off, because you want to have them plenty reserved for the competition that day. And that's the way we work the dog. So, the concepts of conditioning are similar. They're different in what you're trying to do, what you're prepping them for, what their particular competition is. Greyhounds generally don't train for strength. They train for bursts of speed over however long the race is, quarter mile, whatever it is, And that's similar to a treadmill race. You want them to run as fast as they can in the time period or the distance that they're allowed. And the only way to do that is to build them up slowly to do that. So let's say the race is a minute long. When you start your conditioning, you could run them, you could sprint them, you could use a treadmill, you could use a bike, all the same stuff. But when it comes to the actual event, what you want to simulate is running them on that event. See what pace they're at. and try and increase that. Now, you may bait them if that's allowed, right? But because it's such a short race and it's a high intense event and workout, you have to figure out a way for them to increase their pace. Because in some places, baiting the dog is not allowed. So with the verbal command or just the dog understanding that this is go time for this treadmill race, the dog has to learn, or you have to teach the dog to increase its pace. But the dog can't do that if he's not fit. If he doesn't have air already and he's not used to running that pace, then that would be part of your training. Teach him how to do that, right? And some are not built for treadmill race, or have the attitude for treadmill race, or they won't wall climb, or they're not good at wall climbing. They can't jump high enough, whether it's their structure or their attitude. They don't have the desire to do it. Just like some are not good for weight pull. Some are not built for weight pull, or they don't like doing it. But with most dogs, just like I've mentioned before, dogs can be trained to do all kinds of things. So if you start training them when they're very young, I'm talking 3 or 4 months. There's no reason to wait till they're 6 months or 8 months or a year to begin the training to learn how to do these events. Doesn't mean you condition them, doesn't mean you burn them out, a young pup. All you're doing is introducing them to the event, teaching them to keep, so that they understand how to do it, so that they will do it, and you'll find out what they like best and what they don't. For treadmill race, part of the conditioning could be flirt pole, because it's a high intense, fast workout. Or you could just use the treadmill itself. They'll become familiar with racing on the treadmill, and you have those spurts. And here's another factor. Some dogs are entered in more than one event. If it's just the one event, that's what the workout would be. But if it's all 3 events, let's say you go and you want to enter in wall climb, treadmill race, and weight pull, that's how you'd have to work your dog. You'd have to simulate each workout and each practice to simulate what you're going to go through for that day of legal competition sports. So they're going to have to have good air. They're going to have to be fast and quick. They're going to have to be able to jump high, and they're going to have to be able to pull a lot of weight. It'd be like a decathlon or a triathlon athlete, You want high averages of each event so that you have a chance to win the competitions. That involves a good keep or a great keep, to be able to manipulate the dog to be prepared for all 3 events or 2 of those events. If it's one event, that's where your focus is. Focus on that one event. Get them in the best shape you possibly can, trained for that event, conditioned for that event. But if it's more than one or all 3, you're going to have to do that too. And believe me, there's athletes that can do that. If a human can do a triathlon or a decathlon or anything like that, then our pit bulls can do the same. They can be great at all 3 on that day. You just have to condition them for that. So they need good air, they need speed, they need to be able to jump high, they need to be able to pull heavy weight. So your backyard could be set up for all 3. If you're really heavy into that and you really enjoy it, and you have a perfect dog that you consider built for those 3 events, and that is able to condition for those 3 events and enjoys doing all 3 events, there's no reason you can't enter them in all 3. And just like anything else, with time and experience, they're going to get better and better at it. So that's where I would see peaking a dog for that event, for that day. that is almost standard. It's no question that it has to be done. But if it's for confirmation, I wouldn't do it for that reason. For the reasons I mentioned, could screw with their head, could make them rambunctious and disorderly and destructive, too aggressive. Because they want to release that energy. The dogs are not stupid. They know what they're getting ready for when you peek them out like that. And just their body and their mind coming together like that, whether they realize it or not, that's what they're prepped for. They're wound for sound, ready to go. And in confirmation, you don't have to do that. But you also shouldn't starve your dog down just so a judge can see all the bones and all the muscles in their body. A good judge can tell whether a dog's been worked, conditioned, or just starved down and dried out and dehydrated. Their skin looks raspy. The hair is not shiny. The hair looks raspy. You can tell they're dehydrated just looking at the skin. You can tell by the way they walk. Their gait isn't proper. They're weak. They look weak. A freaking cold wind can blow them over. They have no strength. You can't fool a good judge. So I suggest not doing that. You don't need the heavy conditioning that you would in a program for peeking a dog out, or like we used to do for matches like that. That's not necessary. But they do need to be fit. They do need to be exercised. They do need to be down in weight. They don't have to be at pit weight. But it doesn't help if they're heavy either. Even if they look strong. Even if they're hydrated. Being too heavy and carrying too much fat or too much weight, too much muscle, all that means is the judge can't see the definition of the dog. And that's what he needs to look at, or she needs to look at, when you're judging confirmation. There's a kind of saying, you want to bring them into the show ring just like you would into the box. It's the concept. It's not the actuality of it. Which means you want them fit. You want to be able the judge to see that confirmation. The muscle, the structure, all part of it. The attitude is all part of it. So you don't want a dried out, dehydrated, weak individual with dull eyes and no spirit and a weird gait, tired like that. Like I said, a good judge can tell the difference. So you have those 2 or 3 different types of concepts of preparing dog for show and preparing the dog for go. So in today's world, the go part isn't what we used to do in the past. The go part is actually the legal sports, whether it's hunting, treadmill race, wall climb, weight pull, lure course, whatever it is. Requires conditioning, requires peeking a dog out. The conditioner has to understand the events they're going to be involved in. And they have to know how to condition their dog for that particular event or multitude of events. Once you get that down pat, you can enter all 3. Or if they only have weight pull for that show, you got them ready for the weight pull. Some don't have weight pull, but they have the treadmill race or even hang time. I've seen those too. I've been to events where they're hanging dog for hours, with the jump up and they just hang on. How long can you stay in a hole on the rope or the bait or whatever it is, the hide or whatever it is. So any event, any sporting event requires a particular type of conditioning. And if you're entered in more, it needs particular types of conditioning. It's all good. It's all fun, And, if you like conditioning dogs, that's your forte, get in there and do it. Because in the past, and probably in the present too, the shows that I've been to, most of the dogs are not conditioned for their event. They're not conditioned at all. And it's amazing to see a dog pull, a 40-something pound dog pull 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 pounds. Imagine what he could pull if he was conditioned for that particular weight pull. I don't know, 6,000, 7,000 pounds? Why not? Because what happens when they're not conditioned, they start petering out during the day. And because they're tired, they're worn out. So that long distance, if you will, conditioning program will help them to deal with the stress of having to make several pulls a day and still be strong at the end of the event where the heaviest weight is pulled, as they were in the beginning of the event where it's less weight they're pulling. Same thing with the treadmill race. They come out gangbusters, bam, 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 hit that mark. But as the day progresses, because they're doing more runs and more runs and more runs, dogs are tired and blow it out. So if you think of conditioning this way, when you start the event, whether it's weight pull or treadmill race or any of that stuff, in conditioning, in the traditional sense, you want the dog stronger and faster towards the end of the keep that he was when you first began the keep. Even if they're down in weight and the fat isn't a factor in the dog, and they can come out gangbusters and work hard, you still want them to do better as the keep progresses. Be able to handle the stress better, go longer distance, longer time on the mill, whatever it is. That's what conditioning is. They're better at the end of the keep than they were at the beginning of the keep or the middle of the keep. And that's how I see those modern day legal sports. You want them to be able to pull a lot more weight than they did. You want them to be able to pull a lot more weight at the end of the event, at the peak of the event, than they did when they started the event. But you can't do that if they're in good condition. I mean, if they're not in good condition. That's the mark of good conditioning. And like I said, I've seen so many that haven't. And I've seen dogs that previously could run like hell on that treadmill race, win it, and then enter a different event a couple of 3 months later. They haven't been worked. They're obviously heavy. There's no way they could do what they did in the previous event. And I've told people that, The guy told me one time, oh, watch this dog. He's an ace on the treadmill race. He can run this thing like this and that. And I looked at the dog. I said, not today. He can't. Not going to happen today. Not in shape for it, man. Doesn't matter if the dog was an ace treadmill runner. Doesn't matter if he's a champion or grand champion in any event. If he's not prepped for that particular event that day, he's not going to do what he did before. He's going to fall way short. It's like a champion boxer or top 10 boxer. World class. But if he's not in condition, some lower level guy can beat him up and knock him out. That's in shape. Same thing with the dogs. So this is a little bit on, the difference between show and go, and little advice on how to condition dogs for both. Love to hear your feedback. Thanks for your support. Merch is still available. Press the like button, comment, all that stuff. I'm going to repeat it because this is ongoing, and hopefully we'll keep this going for years. Got more interviews coming up. I spread them out, get a hold of people. Some willing to do it, some not. That's okay if they don't. I don't understand. And it's a time factor. Got to get the right time because they usually last an hour or better. But they'll keep coming. We got time, so what's the hurry, right? More guys, more. I'm going to have some girls on here too, hopefully in the future. Me and School Baby will do some more and repeat guys. So we'll just keep it flowing. Thanks again.